Just like the variety of plants and life on our native grasslands, South Dakota is filled with diverse partners playing a role in supporting those grasslands. Each episode, Partners on the Prairie will introduce you to those impacting South Dakota's grasslands. I'm your host, Laura Kaler, Director of the South Dakota Grasslands Initiative, a collaborative network of diverse partners who support grasslands as a means of retaining prairie ecosystems, both native and restored, while sustaining rural economies and healthy communities. Lori Brown, TNC Riparian Health Program Manager, and Joe Blastic, TNC Prairie Coteau Conservation Coordinator, are here today to share about the Nature Conservancy, a global nonprofit that is focused on the needs of working lands in South Dakota. Lori and Joe operate on opposite ends of the state, and each address different needs in that geography. Thanks, Joe and Lori, so much for joining us today. Looking forward to talking about what TNC looks like here in South Dakota. TNC is bigger than just South Dakota. Lori, can you talk a little bit about what it looks like on a global scale and then in South Dakota?
Yeah, TNC is driven by our mission to support biodiversity and protect the land and waters that all life relies on. And we're intentionally very flexible and dynamic in that mission. So what we do at a global scale and what we do at a local scale are two very different things oftentimes. And even within that, what TNC does in Colorado or Montana or Kansas may be different from what we do in North and South Dakota. And that is to help us be responsive to local partners, to local needs, and to local geographies.
And what you do on the west side of the state is different than what Joe does on the east.
Yes, our programs and our goals are different, but oftentimes our priorities may be the same in working in these areas that are biodiversity hotspots, areas that still represent high quality intact grassland habitat. So things may look a little bit different, but our umbrella here is to protect and maintain grassland ecosystems.
Joe, can you delve into TNC's work in South Dakota and how they respond to what the grasslands need here?
Yes. So geographically, we've got programs, as far west and central and eastern parts of the state. So as you go starting from west to east, I suppose, there's the Whitney Preserve, which is south of Hot Springs. That's a program that has a pretty long history being down there. It's roughly 5,000 acres, maybe a little bit under. That actually has a really nice facility there for partners to host meetings if they'd like to do that. It's one of our showcase sites in South Dakota with Cascade Creek and a lot of rare plants that are associated with that creek and stream system. And we use that site as a demonstration kind of area. So right now there's a whole lot of tree and brush removal to kind of open up like what the Southern Hills would have looked like kind of historically, big open ponderosa pines, savanna type systems. When you go in the Southern Hills, a lot of those areas are choked out. So Lane and others are just really trying to open things up, working with neighbors on grazing and those sorts of things to kind of make that the showcase place. And again, the value that it brings for partners is taking advantage of that facility. It's a great site. There's all kinds of field days through the course of summertime, and it could be a good meeting area for partners to utilize by contacting that program.
What town is that close to?
It's south of Hot Springs. I want to say 11 miles or so. Okay. It's easy access. Like, again, it's a really nice facility that's available for partners and meetings and things. Then as you move further east, just west of Leola is Ordway Prairie, which is the bison operation. And that also has a facility that can be open for partners for utilizing for meetings and things. Out there, Mary and others have a long history of working with neighbors for grazing, running the bison program, as well as being kind of innovative and trying to figure out some of the noxious weed issues, making it kind of a laboratory of sorts, trying to be innovative, trying new things at scale. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. And then leveraging that for demonstrations, tours, outreach, education, those sorts of things. As you move further east, my program here in Clear Lake kind of focuses on the I-29 corridor with a handful of smaller sites that we do a lot with grazing, rest. You look at northern tallgrass prairie as a whole, most of it's under private ownership and probably utilized differently than just having, rested remnant prairie with kind of conservation type management. And then we do this targeted grazing for different times of the year, very ecologically objective type stuff. And then in addition to that, there's a pretty long history going back to actually probably the mid 2000s of working with prescribed fire with partners out here, hosting fire schools, outreach education, working with fire departments. And now we've partnered with Audubon and Game Fish and Parks and SDSU Extension and the Grassland Coalition, and others, Pheasants Forever. And there's probably more I'm forgetting, but doing more outreach for grazing schools and prescribed fire outreach, restoration management type schools or field days, as well as kind of focusing on some of the ecologically sensitive calcareous fen sites that are found on the eastern slope of the coteau. So across the state, there's a lot of variation, like Lori said, but a lot of it does hinge with working with partners, using TNC sites as demonstration sites, and working towards kind of targeted ecological objectives for how we manage these sites.
With your work in prescribed fire, how have you seen the perception of that change as far as a comfort level using it and understanding what it's being used for?
So there's a couple of drivers with the prescribed fire take. In the mid 2000s, we had a large grant, and the question was, are people open to burning? And through that project, we did find that there was a lot of interest in doing prescribed fire. But overall, the fire culture of older generations teaching younger generations had kind of fallen apart. But the memory of fire being a part of the landscape and how that helps our grasslands was still there. So we did prescribed fire here. We did it on private lands. When the grant money kind of dried up, we shifted to working with fire departments and doing fire schools and outreach that way. And here, within the last couple of years, we've actually started doing live fire schools where it's open to anybody. You come and attend an evening classroom session or the day of classroom sessions, and then we actually get you out and do some prescribed fire, get you hands-on experience. As you go further west towards James River, Missouri River, the need for fire is focused on the loss of grasslands from tree and brush encroachment, particularly the red cedars. And the interest there is because there's an economic driver. Folks are losing the ability to have more animals on their pastures, and that's creating interest out there. And there's a ton of energy and momentum for doing more fire in those areas. So we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg for what's to come in the future here.
If someone wants to check out the burn schools that you help put on, how can they get more information about those?
On the South Dakota Grassland Coalition page, it comes up under the events tab. There's a few different listservs that usually come out. The South Dakota Grass Info listserv run through Pete and SDSU Extension. And also we put these things out through local newspapers and things when things are shaping to happen. So, or you just call and ask somebody. It's pretty well known that these are going to happen typically in the springtime. So we do the Oak Lake School here south of Astoria twice, where we do one earlier in the spring, and that's kind of targeted for tree brush removal or removal, control, whatever. And then there's the follow-up one, which is later in May, and we're demonstrating burning on native prairie and how the fire is so much different and more controllable.
And those are for landowners and professionals. Anyone can attend those?
Anybody can come and attend, and we encourage all sorts of ages. And like I said, we've had some folks that had burned, for 30, 40 years. They just want to come out and smell the smoke again. Then there's been some real young ones that came out too. And then there's actually going to be another one this year, maybe further west along the lower rural, someplace out in that area. So geographically, we've got kind of the eastern half of the state covered if somebody's really interested. If you can't be at one, there's probably another one you could attend.
And Lori, your work on the west side of the state is pretty different.
Yeah, I don't get to light stuff on fire. Not yet, anyways.
So can you talk a little bit about how you support the grasslands by looking at the riparian zones?
Yeah. So even though our bodies of work on the ground are quite different, I think our framework is very similar. You know, one of the things that TNC is able to do is to be innovative and to support demonstration and taking demonstration sites to education and then helping scale up this work to a meaningful capacity. And so I work on these riparian areas out here in western South Dakota. Our riparian areas are only a small part of our landscape, right? Less than 2% of our grasslands are considered riparian bottoms. But everything that makes a living in the grasslands needs riparian areas to complete its life cycle. Our invertebrates, our fish communities, our charismatic wildlife like pronghorn and mule deer and our songbirds and grouse all heavily depend on these riparian areas, as do livestock producers in our rural communities. And they're also oftentimes the most degraded and overutilized part of our landscape. And so by focusing on better understanding what our riparians are doing or not doing, we're kind of targeting these biodiversity hotspots in a vast landscape. We started talking with partners quite a few years ago around what areas did they feel like were their biggest resource concerns and that they currently did not feel like they had a lot of tools in their toolbox to manage for. Through those conversations, riparian areas and these prairie stream systems kept coming up over and over and over again. That folks, landowners, managers, conservation partners didn't really know what our riparian areas can and should look like, and how do we help restore them and manage for riparian health and resilience. So we started this program with a lot of partners, NRCS, Pheasants Forever, SDSU, School of Mines, all the folks that Joe named as well, to start, first of all, like kind of wrapping our minds around what is a healthy riparian system in these semi-arid and arid grassland systems out here, and what sort of tools can we start putting in the toolbox. Our first step was to develop this manual, this field guide to classifying and understanding Western South Dakota prairie streams. And that's a free available document that SDSU hosts for us. We also have hard copy manuals for folks as well. It includes kind of riparian ecology 101, hydrology 101, some monitoring assessment sheets and things like that. And it's all made for a non-technical audience. I'm a rangeland specialist by trade. I'm not a hydrologist or a fluvial geomorphologist, so I appreciate non-technical information in that space. So we started trying to develop these learning tools to put in folks' hands. So when you have questions about your stream, you have some resources to go to, and they're resources that are written for the average person to understand, where you don't need a PhD and a bunch of other acronyms next to your name to really digest the information.
Those who maybe learn better from seeing it in person, do you offer some tours?
So part of our work in developing that kind of stream manual, the next step was to also develop these demonstration sites so that we could actually have places for folks to see it and to touch it and to feel it. You know, people can't care about something that they don't feel and touch and have right in front of them. We've been working on developing a suite of low-cost, low-tech restoration tools and techniques for landowners and resource managers. And we have a series of demonstration sites across Western South Dakota where we have these restoration structures installed so folks can see what they look like. They can see the materials they used. There's a huge learning and outreach component to it. So we host tours and workshops for folks to actually get their hands dirty, get in the creek, build some of these structures, and become familiar with some of these things that we're experimenting with. It's all under this umbrella of nature-based solutions, right? We're trying to work with nature to improve the resilience of these stream systems. So a big component of working with nature in stream systems is mimicking the role that beaver would have played in these systems, and at times working to help beaver return to these systems where that's appropriate and where that's a goal for the landowner or the resource manager.
And what types of results do you see when beaver are reintroduced?
Really, really amazing results. And as someone who is already like a beaver believer, like even I am surprised at how quick and the intense magnitude of response we get. There's this site that I went to recently where the landowner was having persistent issues with spring flooding, right? As a lot of us do. Like every year we get some spring high water, and it was washing out culverts and other road crossings and threatening some infrastructure along the creek. And he'd always been trapping the beaver out of this system too. After talking with some conservation partners, who decided to let the beaver stay and hang out and kind of leave them alone. And within 2 years of leaving the beaver alone, he had mitigated almost all of his flooding issues, because the presence of beaver dams make a lot more space for that water in the channel. And so he wasn't seeing these high flashy water events anymore. He was seeing persistent water stay on his property through the dry season, through July, August, and September. And then likewise in the springtime, wasn't seeing these kind of scary high water events. He was just seeing a more stable, gradual stream kind of start to return in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, really 2 years is a blink of an eye in these systems out here.
What other species do you see benefiting from these areas that you're focusing on improving the riparian health?
I anecdotally see a lot more bird diversity at these sites. Right, we're not known for waterfowl the way the eastern side of the state is, but we definitely see a tremendous amount of waterfowl being drawn to these sites in the springtime. A lot of our early work was really tied to our core sage grouse habitat out here. And we've known for a long time how important these areas are to sage grouse in terms of their ability to produce insects and support those broods through the dry season. But it's really remarkable the amount of life that returns to these stream bottoms once we start slowing that water down and making that riparian plant community more resilient.
So Joe or Lori, if you've got someone listening who's interested in partnering with TNC on a professional level, what are some options? As well as what if you have somebody that just wants to volunteer some time helping support the work that you're doing? What options exist and how do they get in touch?
So I'll jump in here real quick because I think I missed the mark earlier. We do have a history of working with partners, right? So Lori's in NRCS office up on her part of the world. One of the programs that they run out of the Ordway office is easement techs, where we have TNC employees working with Fish and Wildlife to help get folks enrolled in easement programs. And then we're already working with, say, NRCS in different ways for helping for outreach and education and all these different outreach events, all the various schools and stuff that going up and down the I-29 corridor. So we do have a history working with folks. And I mean, I won't speak for Lori, but if somebody's interested and wants to get involved, it's not too hard to find any one of us across the state anymore. A simple internet search and we all pop up. So folks are always looking to expand their networks and growing these really good outreach efforts we got going on. And I also should add, the TNC sites that have been described are all open to the public. Sometimes there's a perception of it's not open to the public. Open to the public doesn't necessarily mean it's open to hunting all the time. We do have sites that are open to hunting while others are not. But if folks are looking at TNC signs, they're more than welcome to pull off the gravel road or whatever and go kick around and enjoy the sites.
Great to know.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Our Whitney Preserve has a long history of volunteer opportunities and volunteer programs for folks who want to come out to a preserve and get their hands dirty. And as Joe mentioned, we're pretty easy to get a hold of. You can shoot any one of us an email or call an office and we'll hopefully direct you to the right person. We've had a lot of volunteers do really cool projects with us. We've had some folks help us with some geospatial mapping and random stuff like that, student projects who want to volunteer for a summer. We're always pretty much available to support partners in terms of technical assistance or in any other way we can help folks in their work and try and get more stuff done on the ground.
Thank you both. Anything else to add?
No, I appreciate the time and doing a short little visit.
And it's just been fun to learn a little bit more about TNC. So thank you both of you for your time. And we encourage anyone listening today to visit our website, sdgrassinitiative.org/resources, to find our podcast from our other grassland partners as well. Thanks and have a great day.